Merry Christmas! In today's video we're going to make a gingerbread house from scratch. Can you believe it? This recipe is not too difficult, but it is going to be about 6 stages long, so be sure to plan a couple days to make it all together. Before you collect ingredients or put them all together, your first step in making this gingerbread house is to come up with a plan of some sort. We have come up with our own custom plan using graphing paper. There are plenty of plans online as well. You can even go as simple as just making an A-frame house. Whatever way you choose, the first step is to figure out how you're going to build your gingerbread house. The second step on our journey is to mix all the ingredients that you'll need together, and then place them on a clean towel to cool. After that, we will cut the gingerbread and then bake it and add some windows, and then we'll decorate it and assemble it all together. Last of all, we'll surround the gingerbread house with fluff and stuff to give it a little bit more character. With that broad overview, once you have your plan in place, it's time to put all the ingredients together. Now for this recipe, you will need 16 cups of flour, 2 cups of packed brown sugar, 4 cups of corn syrup, 2 cups of shortening. Now, you may be wondering why the shortening is floating in some water. One way to measure shortening is to just stuff it in a regular cup. Another way is to fill a large measuring cup like this one with a little bit of water up to, say, the 1 cup mark, and then pack the shortening down until the water reaches the 3 cup mark. That way you have 2 cups of shortening. It helps make an accurate volume of shortening. That is a fun baking tip. You'll also need 1/4 cup of ground ginger and 1/4 cup of ground cinnamon. We're going to sort this next part into 2 parts. First, we're going to mix the flour, the ginger, and the cinnamon all together in a bowl with a spoon. Second of all, we're going to be mixing our 2 cups of sugar, our 2 cups of shortening, and our 4 cups of corn syrup in a large pan on the stove. The goal here is to create a warm, melted substance that you'll pour over the dry ingredients. Then we'll mix that all together and place it on our clean towel. Let's start with the brown sugar, the shortening, and the corn syrup on the stove. We'll get that mixing and melting while we finish up with the dry ingredients. So in our large pot, we'll put 2 cups of packed brown sugar, Next up, let's add the shortening. If you use the water method to measure, go ahead and pour all that water out before you add the shortening. And last of all, our 4 cups of corn syrup. This bottle is exactly a quart, so that's wonderful. We'll go ahead and set this on the stove on a medium heat. Just keep an eye on it and make sure to stir so that it doesn't burn, but that it melts all together into a smooth texture. While that's melting on a medium to low heat, let's go ahead and mix the rest of our ingredients together. Now typically in these recipes, we like to use flour lightly, but for this recipe, we're just going to scoop it in rather than trying to sift it or make it light. So there's 2 scoops. Here's our 16 cups of flour. It's a bit larger than I expected it to be, so let's grab another cooking pot to mix it all together. Hopefully that should be enough space. Next we'll add our 1/4 cup of ginger. Last of all, we'll add 1/4 cup of cinnamon. We'll mix these all together. Be sure to keep an eye on and continue to stir your ingredients on the stove as well. It's beginning to smell a lot like Christmas. Make no mistake, making a gingerbread house from scratch is a lot of work, but it is a lot of fun, and I think it's well worth the effort. Once your shortening, corn syrup, and brown sugar all mixed together, we will go ahead and add this to the dry ingredients. Once it starts to come together into basically a thick Play-Doh, we'll turn it out onto a floured towel. All right, next up, we're going to roll this out into a large square. That way we can cut our design out. Once you have the dough rolled out so that it's fairly thin, I would say maybe 1/4 of a centimeter or 1/8 of an inch, I guess, all the way out into a large square circle. Go ahead and lay your template out. If you have enough, this is where you'll stop. If not, you might have to make another batch using the same process that we used earlier. Either way, we're going to let this cool for a little bit and then cut it out. That way it doesn't merge together. If it's too warm when you cut it out, it will merge back together. So we're just going to let it cool and then we'll cut it out. Now that our gingerbread has cooled, you can go ahead and set out all of your templates. We're going to cut all of these up and then place them on a large baking tray and put them in the oven. Once these pieces are all cut out, we will put them in tray by tray into the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 to 15 minutes each. Once you have all the pieces of your gingerbread house cut out and baked, it's time for making the windows. Now, making windows is optional. I would only recommend that adults prepare this portion of the video. The reason being, we're going to be making some candy on the stove, and candy gets incredibly hot. Not only that, it has a lot of residual heat after the fact, so it can be particularly dangerous for burns and things of the sort. Knowing this, if you are an adult preparing the windows of your gingerbread house, your first step is to lay all the pieces out that are getting the windows on a surface that can take a certain amount of heat. Right now we have all of these on a tile covered in some foil. The next step is to grab yourself a stainless steel pan, as well as 2/3 cup of corn syrup, 2 cups of granulated sugar, and 2/3 cup of water. Combine these ingredients in your small pan and heat it up until it's about 290 degrees Fahrenheit, the hard crack stage. How you'll know it's ready is you'll be able to take a spoon, lift it out, and it starts to crack as it's breaking down. Once the candy is in the hard crack stage, be careful as you pour it into each of these windows that you have. I'll be using a small metal pitcher, being careful not to burn my hands on the side of it, and then using a knife to sort of feed off the end of it. And without further ado, let's make some candy. We're going to check for the hard crack stage is using a bowl of water. Occasionally I'll drop little bits of candy into here until it's able to crack off, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Let's add our 2 cups of sugar and our 2/3 cup of corn syrup. Now that we have our candy, we'll quickly and carefully pour this into our windows. Once your windows are in, it takes about 30 minutes for it to cool. It may need additional time. Just keep an eye on it and keep it away from people that might get burned easily from it. If you need extra, just repeat the same process all over again to make more ingredients for the windows. Once the windows have set, it's time for one of the most fun parts of building the gingerbread house, which is decorating. Go ahead and grab your favorite candies or pretzels or whatever you are interested in. Gather them all up and make a simple icing. For this icing, all you'll need is some confectioner's sugar and a little bit of water. Add the confectioner's sugar first, and then gradually add little bits of water until it's a tacky texture. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. But for now, let's start decorating. Once the candy has had a chance to dry on the gingerbread, we're ready for the next step in the process, which is assembling the gingerbread house. Now at this point, it might be a good idea to have some extra help in putting the gingerbread house together. I will have an extra set of hands just so that we're able to assemble it. This is also a good point to mention that I'm going to be building this gingerbread house for display. So we're going to be using a hot glue gun. If you'd like to make it so that you can eat the gingerbread house, go ahead and make the same icing that we made earlier to affix the candies to the gingerbread. But let's get started on assembling that gingerbread house. Before we do that, go ahead and grab yourself a piece of cardboard that should fit your gingerbread house and cover it with a piece of foil. I'm also going to be taking some Christmas lights and sticking them inside our gingerbread house because we have all of these lovely candy glass windows and we want to see inside of them. So we'll poke a couple holes in our foil, that way we can place the lights up and through and illuminate the house from inside. But without further ado, let's get started on assembling our gingerbread house. Once your gingerbread is assembled, our final step is to make a whip, to make sort of a ground covering for our gingerbread house. Once again, this is a decorative portion, not an edible portion. We will be using raw eggs, so don't do this step if you want to keep your gingerbread edible. But if you are desiring to make a gingerbread house just for decoration, then let's start with the ingredients that you'll need for this whip. For this snow frosting recipe, you will need 5 egg whites, 4 cups of powdered sugar, 1½ teaspoon of cream of tartar, and last of all, 1 cup of boiling hot water. So we're going to start by putting 5 egg whites in this bowl and mixing them up for about a minute. Then we will add the powdered sugar and the cream of tartar. Once we have all those together, we'll add our 1 cup of boiling hot water in slowly, and then whisk it all together on high until it forms a stiff peak. Alright, let's pour these in our mixing bowl and mix them for 1 minute. Next, let's add our 4 cups of powdered sugar and our 1½ teaspoons of cream of tartar. And here we have our snow frosting. As you can tell, it's gotten thick. It's able to create peaks. Now all that's left to do is cover the base of this with the snow frosting. As a reminder, don't eat this. This is just for decoration. Once you have your snow frosting on the ground, the last step is to decorate it however you like. You can put a couple of trees in front of ours, but you can put candy or any sort of sweets around just to make it a little bit extra. And here we have our finished gingerbread house. A very Merry Christmas to you and your friends and or family. I hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and I hope to see you again next year. If you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next video. Totally.